Welcome back to the Physics That Heals. As you will have noticed, at the moment I am talking a bit more slowly than normal, because I have a little problem. It happens that due to the subclinical inflammation, oxidative stress, and many other factors, my red blood corpuscles are tending to clump together. The result is that my microcirculation, the blood flow and transport of oxygen to the tissues and transport of waste away from them, is a bit inhibited. But now, thanks to the treatment with extremely low frequency and intensity electromagnetic fields, ELF, EMF,
everything is back to normal. As you will have guessed, today we are talking about blood and microcirculation. Imagine the blood circulation like a road network. The arteries and major veins are the motorways, and as they ramify, the roads get ever smaller, right down to the back roads and small lanes that gives access to homes. These small roads represent the microcirculation. It is along these small roads that the important exchanges are made, just as we unload our cars after going shopping, and we load up anything that has to be taken to the dump. In a similar way, in microcirculation, and especially in capillaries, there is exchange between the blood and tissues. This allows the distribution of oxygen from blood to tissues, and conversely carbon dioxide from the tissues to the blood. In addition, all the nutritional substances pass from the circulation to the cells, which release their waste back to the circulation. The good function of microcirculation is therefore fundamental for the health of tissues, and its malfunction can occur for two main reasons. One, because the arteries, capillaries, and venules, the roadways, have problems. Two, because the red blood corpuscles develop clumps, or rouleaux, as we mentioned at the start of the episode. These form mainly when there are strong stress factors, for example, a subclinical state of inflammation, or damage from oxidative stress, leading to an adhesion of the red corpuscles like little trains, making it more difficult for them to flow. Imagine in a back road the difference in agility between a car and a truck. The presence in a capillaries of rouleaux of different sizes and more or less free corpuscle make it more or less difficult for the blood to fulfill its function of transporting oxygen and nutritional substances, and providing a waste removal system for the tissues. It is therefore essential to limit a formation of this rouleau. Another important aspect is that the blood vessels, the arterioles, capillaries, and venules are free-flowing. There should be no issues of wide and obstruction of the vessels that might inhibit the free flow of blood. Returning to our example of rouleaux being trucks and cars as regards blood vessels, there can be a narrowing of a lane in a minor road. This narrowing can be the result of either a restriction inside the vessel or a change in its width. So we can say that for microcirculation, especially the capillaries, two conditions need to be satisfied. One is the presence of a sufficiently wide vascular opening, and the second is the absence of rouleau formations. When one of these two conditions is not adequately satisfied, the tissues supplied by this section of microcirculation can be compromised. This might not affect only the specific tissue supplied by a given section of microcirculation. Consider, for example, the importance of the arterioles for regulating blood pressure. It is in these tiny arterioles, the smallest that we have in our bodies, that blood pressure is regulated. It is therefore essential the arterioles function well and that the blood flowing through them is sufficiently fluid. Even if this term is not really precise, but is explaining the idea clearly. Problems associated with the malfunction of microcirculation can be identified in many diseases. Think, for example, of diabetic retinopathy, or what happens in the brain when there is a damage from vascular hypoflow, with pathogenesis of muscular dementia. Can ELF, EMF help in these situations? Obviously yes, otherwise this episode title would not be Blood and Microcirculation, and instead the lack of effect on blood and microcirculation. And no doubt you already knew the answer. Research in Germany has demonstrated that administering ELF-EMF can reduce this rouleaux and facilitate blood circulation. ELF-EMF also appears to have an effect on the diameter of the arterioles, modulating their aperture. In brief, at a very least as an hypothesis, ELF-EMF could be useful as an integrated therapy, for example, for treating hypertension. Or considering that reduced clumping means more oxygen transported to the tissue, it might be applicable for improving sport performance. But the effects of ELF-EMF are not limited just to blood, clumping, and arterioles. It appears that another important effect of this electromagnetic therapy is on hypoxic tissues, tissues lacking in oxygenation. When stimulation with ELF-EMF lead to the formation of new blood vessels. Formation of new vessels in hypoxic tissues is very relevant in all healing processes. But we will talk about this aspect in the next video. At this point, it is important to specify something. It appears that as regards cancer tissues, there is no creation of new blood vessels in response to ELF-EMF, no development of neoangiogenesis. In other words, while non-pathological tissues like a wound is stimulated to form new vessels and regenerate tissue, in cancer tissue this type of response is completely absent. And so tumor tissue is not able to benefit from ELF-EMF in the same way. This aspect, combined with the effect mentioned in the video on oxidative stress, show how ELF-EMF could be an extremely useful support for cancer patients. But as we said in a previous video, we are not suggesting that all hospitals should integrate this therapy starting tomorrow, because a lot of research still needs to be done to confirm these observations. Let's move on from medicine to the world of sport. It is easy to imagine that improved fluidity of blood flow in the microcirculation capillaries could enhance sports performance, and not only. A very important aspect is recovery after sport activity following competitions or training. Thanks to the effect we just described, it is logical to assume that the muscle will be helped to recover the energy expended during the activity and eliminate the waste products produced during the physical effort. Personally, since I started using ELF-EMF therapy regularly, I have noticed that my recovery after physical activity has greatly improved. We have reached the end of the video, and before going out for a run, I would like to thank you for your many messages to lafisicachecura@ionorisonanza.it. I remind you that the bibliographic references relevant to today's subject are listed below. I take my leave by quoting Protagoras. Of all things, the measure is man. Of the things that are, that they are. And of the things that are not, that they are not. Enjoy your run.